guitarist, session guitarist, touring guitarist Nicky V. And some of you may have know about him because he recently did a video about playing in Nashville and what do touring musicians make on the road and how there's different tiers of income for different musicians. And speaking of which, Nicky's joining us right now, so I'm going to bring him into the chat, and we should have him momentarily. Hey, Nicky, how are you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
All right, great. Thanks for joining the chat here. How are you doing on this Monday?
Good, man. Had a busy morning and all's well.
All right.
Yourself? What's new?
It's hard to explain in 30 seconds, but yeah, I was actually just preparing for this. I didn't plan on talking about this, but I was just watching a video on balancing content creation and balancing art, and how a lot of us as artists and musicians right now are being forced to act as a media company, as a well, I think you actually have your AirPods in, and I actually left the volume on my computer. Give me 1 second. I'm going to turn that off. Wildly embarrassing.
No, you're fine.
But I was just watching a video about how now as musicians,
Try to clean this so it's a little more clean. Sorry.
This is amateur hour here.
We got it dialed in now.
But how musicians are and artists, we are forced to act as a media company now because we are expected to crank out content. We are expected to have a team of people around us and have everything look insanely professional.
Yes.
And that's something I think we should get into, because it seems like you're doing that right now. It seems like you are putting out content, but you're also being a musician, and you're doing both at a high level. So it seems like you're kind of wearing two hats at once. And I'm curious to hear about how you balance that. But before we get into that, why don't you tell people, my viewers, a little bit of your backstory? Where are you from?
Okay. Yeah, man. I'm from a small town in southeast Missouri called Cape Girardeau. And it's like, I don't know, it's probably like 40,000 people. So it's like a normal little sized town. It's got a college and stuff in it. And my mom taught me how to play guitar when I was 13. And she had an old Gibson that I got back there in the closet right now.
Okay.
And it was sitting in the corner with a bunch of dust on it. And she was like, really good finger picker and singer songwriter, kind of hippie stuff, She's from Colorado. And my grandma bought that guitar in a pawn shop in '69. And then my mom learned on it, and it was sitting there. And so I started messing with it. She noticed the dust was messed up on it. She was like, "You been playing the Gibson?" I'm like, "Trying to." And so she tuned it up, and showed me like my basic chords and all that. And my dad was for a beer distributor. We were from Miller at the time, and now we're just Miller Core since they joined. But so he was kind of knew all the bar bands and everybody from down there doing promotional things. And so he was like, "Hey, here's my boy, teach him a lick or whatever." And so I would sit there and watch these bar bands play. And then I would just try to soak up every little thing I could. Then after, the show or on set break, I'd be like, "Hey man, show me something," to go up and they'd show me like a pentatonic scale,
Yeah.
And so I just kind of learned in bars like that. Never had any lessons or anything other than my mom showing me basic chords. And then I was 18. I moved to California to go to the Musicians Institute out there. And that was a gigantic eye opener, just the level change,
Yeah.
And just oh, dude, and stylistically too, it's
yeah,
it's insanely eclectic and diversified. Like all the guitar players play acoustic equally as good as electric. Anything you throw at them, they can cover because they're playing on, like, the session guys are playing on films all day.
Yeah.
So like I'd be sitting there with one of my teachers, and he'd be like, "Oh, what'd you do today, man?" He was like, "Oh, I just got done playing on Ratatouille." Just playing like Italian folk music, Then the next day he comes in and says, "Oh, we're doing some, soundtrack for Need for Speed or something crazy," and he's playing rock guitar. And so in my mind, if you were going to be a studio musician, which is what I always wanted to do, you had to be able to just play anything thrown at you at a really high level. So that's how I practice. I feel like I never got great at anything. I just kind of got like, decent at a bunch of stuff. And the problem was, it's like, okay, it's going to take this many years to get these 10 aspects or genres of your playing to up to this level to where they're going to be, that level what my teachers were doing out there. And so it's like such a slow grind rather than if you just focus on one of these aspects, you could, really dial that in and shoot it up to where you're very specialized in one thing or one aspect of music. And so I went to work on cruise ships because it was like a great place to pay all my bills, fresh out of college, pay all my student loans off.
So
And
quick question before that,
yeah,
like
yeah,
when you were like, how long were you at Musicians Institute?
I did the 2-year program. So it's an
Okay.
associate's degree there. Yep.
Okay. And then you auditioned to get on a cruise line?
Yep. They came through and auditioned like 60 of us. And
Okay.
it was cool, man. I didn't hear anything back, and then I moved back to Missouri. I was getting ready to move to Nashville, and like, okay, I guess we're gonna go try the Nashville thing.
Yeah.
And and I was in town for like 2 weeks. Just basically took all my stuff back because I didn't really want to be in LA. And I got a call, said, "Hey, man, can you be on a plane Thursday? We're flying you to the Bahamas." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I was 20 years old, and so it's perfect. And so I just looked into a really, really good band. Like I'm still doing sessions with a couple of the guys that were in
Hmm.
that first band.
So
And
when you're on the cruise ship though, did you get any connections there, or is that more of just
that was just woodshedding is what that was. And like,
yeah.
I had my head crammed full of information for,
Hmm.
2 years in school of like, playing Latin, jazz, and fusion,
Yeah.
country and rock, everything.
And then you could
And
like go out there and just like kind of test yourself and just see what you can do. And
see what works in the real world. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And how long were you on the cruise ships? Just out of curiosity.
I think it was like 4 years, something like that.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
4 years. That is I say that because I spent time on the cruise ship and I tell people it's the funnest time you never want to have again. Um
Man, so
it's
like I've heard like nothing. I've heard that more than anything, right?
mhm.
And I was just really lucky with a freakishly good band, like studio level cats that are just
Yeah.
somehow managed to be in this one band, and
Yeah.
they kept us together instead of breaking us up every contract. So we were like our own little family, and I became music director with them, so I was the boss, and so it was
Oh, that's great.
nice being able to protect my guys. And I was
Yeah.
good enough at the politicking side of it that I gave us a pretty good life and got us extra days off and that kind of stuff. So it was good. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it actually.
Like when I was working on cruise ships, I noticed that there was something really interesting I noticed, and most of the people there, they had a desire to travel the world, and they were
Yep.
using their job as a way to facilitate the needs, their desire to travel. Whereas myself, I had a desire to practice and play music, and I was using travel as a way to facilitate that need.
That's
So,
exactly right. I was doing the
like
same thing.
when we were in ports, and for people who've never been on a cruise ship, when you're in port, you're allowed to get off for a little while, and you can, depending on where in the world you are, you can go and see some, different corner of the world. And people are like, "Hey, do you want to go to this? We're gonna go, helicopter up to this mountain." And I'm just like, "Man, no, I'm gonna shed this jazz fusion record I just got, man. There's like all these weird time
Exactly.
signatures." And looking back, I'm kind of glad I did that, but I'm also there's I literally been to 7 continents, and there's a lot of the world just I chose to practice instead. Um but I found that also on the cruise ships you have like an amazing high level musician, and then you have someone who is just like they probably should be doing another job, and
It's exactly right. Yeah.
there didn't seem to be too many gaps. There it was like there's like this huge gap and there's nothing in between there.
Yeah.
And I could go on for, I mean, I'm sure I could fill in an hour
Oh,
for
dude, we could do
just yeah.
absolutely. We could. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
But so you're 24, you get off the cruise ships, you decide to move to Nashville, is that correct?
Yeah. So I
Okay.
did. Yeah, I think I did 5 contracts on there, and did that, and I went back to kind of regroup, and I hadn't seen my family really. Me and my mom and dad are really tight,
Hmm.
and I hadn't seen them in probably, or not a lot at least, since I was 18, probably 6 or 7 years. And so I went back, hung out with them for I think it was like probably 10 months, maybe a year. And during that time, I built up my online recording um, like clientele. And my goal
Okay.
was to be able to move to Nashville without having to worry about finances and
Hmm.
not dig into my cruise ship savings because when you're on the boat, it's easy to save up money because there's nothing to spend
Yes.
it on. So the bank account was fat, and but I didn't want to dig into that or use that as a safety net. I wanted to be able to at least break even on my expenses the first day I moved to Nashville. And so what I did is I got on different websites like Sound Better and Fiverr and all these different places. I didn't know what I was doing. I never really recorded much, or definitely didn't self-engineer or know how to EQ an acoustic or anything. And I just recorded like crazy, doing tracks super cheap on these websites. And so it was like a great place to fail in private
Okay.
because, say you're on a session here in Nashville and you get called for your first session. You show up and you're not cutting it, and
Hmm.
everybody can know that you're not cutting it. Like within the first 5 minutes, you're like, oh God,
Yeah.
like way too many punches, missing chords, whatever, your pocket's off,
You feel
and
your
you're at
face getting hot and red, and you're like,
yeah,
"Oh my."
you're out
Yeah.
of tune, and you think you're in tune, but you're out of tune to them, and so recording online, like I said, was a great place to fail in private because most of the clients you're recording for on there, it's not a life and death situation. It's going to ruin your reputation while you're in town.
Hmm.
And so I did probably 500 songs or so on before I moved to Nashville, just recording on there, and it's everything. I talk about like playing, having anything thrown at you. I'll be doing a Bollywood film.
Yeah.
I'm playing semi-tonal stuff with a slide, and then straightforward country strumming on an acoustic, and then grabbing an electric and doing some Van Halen kind of stuff, whatever, faking my way through that.
Yeah. And so,
And yeah,
how much? So, quick question: how much were you making money off of that, or were you doing it more for the experience, or a little bit of both?
at first I was doing it just for the experience.
Okay.
And what I did is this is with most of these websites, what I noticed is like a good thing to kind of like, I have the algorithm kind of figured out is like what they like, because I've just done so many like on, let me look here, like on one of the sites I work on, I've done 2,090 songs on this site.
Wow.
2,091 now, just got approved. But and I'm doing one this morning on here, and then two more that are emailed in, outside of the site.
Hmm.
That's just on the one site. So what I did is I would start out. I think when I first started, I was like doing like tracks for like $30 a song, right? Like nothing. And for every five-star reviews I got, I would raise my price $5.
Okay.
And what that did is that seemed to keep me cheap enough that it was keeping me up towards the front of the algorithm, like the top of the search results.
Hmm.
And anytime I would raise my price, it dropped me down a little bit, then my ratings would come back up. And so it kind of balanced the rating slash credibility, the way it kind of gauged if you were good or not on the site with your price point.
So you were
And
intentionally like putting you were kind of, I don't want to say gaming because that's almost insulting. Like you were very intentionally putting forth, okay, I'm observing this system works this way, and this is one
yes,
way I can work within this system and to my advantage instead of just throwing stuff out there blindly.
exactly. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, this is how I can play their system.
Hmm.
And so I did that. And, so now on there, I'm charging like, I'm looking at my orders right now. One order's for 200, one's for 175, 120, 100,
Hmm.
125. So it kind of depends on the project now, and everything's custom negotiated depending on what they need.
Yeah.
And
And yeah, just so I'm sorry, quick. And so this cat is crawling all over me. I just
you're fine,
adopted
man. I'm
a stray the
sorry.
other day, so yeah, she is a little bit squirrely, so I'm trying to keep them out of this shot unsuccessfully. So
Oh,
I'm
you're good.
sorry for the distraction. Sorry for those folks at home. Yes, it's I'm not using the cat for clickbait at all. It is but so my apologies for the interruption. So now you're making about like 175 to 200, give or take 150 maybe or
It's probably
250.
between 150 to 200 on average on a
Hmm.
song. Generally, is where I'm at, and that's recording
Okay.
online. Yeah,
And like what's your demand like for online work right now?
I'm doing 3 to 4 songs a day usually. So I'm doing.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say like 3 to 4 songs a week. Oh, that's a nice help. Oh, so you're doing 3 to 4 a day, and were you one of the people that thought that, oh, I could just maybe get an interface and just start recording, and it's going to be like that? And did you learn some hard lessons?
Oh God, yeah. Thankfully, my actually the bass player on the cruise ship, his name is Martin Motnick, and he's on
Mm.
a tour in Europe right now, playing with stadiums with these huge acts. And he's rock metal guy, total tech dude. He came over and he was like, "Hey man, here's a hacked version of Logic and a bunch of hacked plugins. Put it on my computer." He's like, "Figure it out," And he kind of
Yeah,
helped me out. Here's where you press record, And everything was trial and error, self taught. And then when I got to Nashville, I made friends with a couple like people that knew what they were actually doing. Like, no, dummy, EQ your acoustic like this. Put your mics
yeah,
here. You know, the basic recording fundamentals. Put everything at minus 12 dB. It's going to mix itself, kind of things.
yeah. And I mean, now, especially like with when we're having technology so rapidly evolve, there's like kind of some old standbys that still just in terms of recording and understanding the process. But things are just evolving so quickly, and there's so much information out there.
Oh, yes.
And it's like it's better to I almost think that every person is a little bit different, but you can really educate yourself by trial and error. But there's also so much information out there on the internet where you could sign up for a course and really learn some things and like learn on the job as opposed to going to like something like Full Sail and mortgaging your future so you have a degree from Full Sail. And yeah, I could go on
Yeah.
with that story, but I'm sure
I got you.
yeah, that's many. I think many people have been in those shoes, and yeah, or they think that online recording they have all these chops musically and technically, like with the recording gear, but maybe their marketing chops aren't up to speed.
It's funny how many aspects of the business we have to figure out to make a living at this now. It's like you have to
Yeah.
be a amateur videographer.
Hmm.
You have to be an advanced intermediate anything because the standard by which you're judged is so incredibly high now.
Yeah.
And
And
it's tricky, like the camera thing. I didn't know what I still know what I'm doing with this. I got a camera that is autofocus and I pray for the best. And sometimes it catches the face behind me. You know what I mean? If I
yeah.
turn my head like this, my hair blocks my face. I gotta figure out how to do this and make sure I'm not looking at the screen, looking at the lens, the monitor. And
Yeah.
it's tricky. It's hard.
It it's also very much I find like I try to take some of the aesthetics from audio recording. And if you listen to some of these great tracks out there that are in isolation, like if you take a Stevie Wonder track and listen to
Yes.
some of the tracks in isolation, you hear all this stuff that wouldn't fly today. That is like there's like a
Oh yeah.
creak in the kick drum pedal, or you hear a
Yep.
you the
Hmm.
time kind of drifts a little bit. But when you listen to everything as a whole, you're like, you're not focusing on that. You're just focusing on what the art is saying to you.
Yes.
And I'm not saying just to be careless and sloppy with how you capture that art because that's an art in itself, but it's also sometimes we get so micro focused on it that we lose track of what we're supposed to be doing, which is art. And
Yes.
and it's also like but that all brings back to like my kind of the point I was making to begin with is that we are expected to be the artist, but we're expected to be the media company as well. We need to have the marketing, we need to have the technology. We need to know, okay, this is what we are saying, this is how we are going to present it. And I think it's can be overwhelming or empowering depending on how you look at it.
It I think it levels the playing field now
Mhm.
because 20 years ago, if you wanted to do a video that's just like the standard quality by which what we're posting on our channels right now, it would take at least a grand to go to some studio to do that or shoot some instructional thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how much that would have cost back then. It's just like the music business now with streaming. It's like okay, it's ruined the music business, and but before you had to have a label, now you don't. So it's hurt it in some aspects and it's helped it in others. It's leveled the playing field out to where if you don't have like the resources, of somebody with a huge deal or something like that, or somebody that just has a loaded parent that can pay to have their stuff shot professionally or whatever, you can research it, get decent enough equipment, and get something that's going to be acceptable if you're smart and able to problem solve.
Yeah. And it's very much like some people like bemoan like okay the streaming because we're not getting paid from that which there is definite issues about that and but there's also you can get your music out across you can record something in your bedroom get it out across the globe and like within a day or two you like have the distribution you have the marketing at your fingertips you can do it
Yes.
um it's but there's always going to be some kind of like music is always evolving and changing, like the industry itself, especially with the advent of the internet. And I find a lot of musicians are trying to, I guess, parrot this old model of, okay, I need to maybe just keep on working on my craft, which is super important, keep on playing shows and hope I get discovered. Maybe
Yeah.
get an agent, build my fan base, by hitting the road, which it's not a bad thing. But just trying to file into this old record label model. And now record labels, if they want to sign you, they want you to have like 200,000 fans. They want you to have your kind of your Instagram or your Facebook or your socials, whatever, up to six figures in following, and they
Yeah.
want you to do all the work and they want to reap all the rewards and then overcharge you for
Yeah.
everything.
Exactly. And then hope you don't get a lawyer to renegotiate your contract 4 or 5
Yeah.
times. You know.
Yeah. And
And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, like, along that theme, it's kind of, this is something I really wanted to talk about today was, instead of when I was younger, I used to look at the game and say the game is rigged, the game is unfair. And a certain part of me still definitely believes that, but I've started saying, oh, the game is still, if you want to play, you need to get into the game.
Yeah.
And instead of focusing on how it's unfair, like, how can you leverage your opportunities? What can you do? And bring it all around. What got me thinking about that? Well, I thought about that since I moved to Nashville. But I think about that a lot as I'm climbing up the ranks musically here in town, getting more gigs, getting better gigs. And I did a lot of gigs for free when I came here, or like a lot of gigs for like $50, which were, yeah, not what I was worth. But
Yeah.
I wanted, so, but I learned how to like, I was playing the game, and I was curious about how you played the game when it came to breaking in Nashville, like in
Okay.
terms of studio work, in terms of live work, and how you balance, say, well, I should be getting paid this, but I know that if I do this $100 gig, it could open up the doors for me. Like, did you have a formula you followed for that?
Yes. And I was winging the formula as I go, but it was also kind of calculated along the way. And
Hmm.
there's I've noticed something was working, I would do it more. Obviously, if something wasn't working, I would stop doing it. And one of the things that I noticed that seemed to work really well is anytime I got called for that gig that wasn't worth it, like, where
Hmm.
you have to learn 20 originals for $75, those kind of gigs,
Hmm.
And on guitar, you don't have to learn all these signature licks and stuff, and it's not a
Yeah.
have charts in front of you kind of gig. Um, I would learn that stuff like I was getting paid $1,000 a day on a huge artist gig,
Hmm.
and say that that artist isn't going anywhere or anything. Well, their drummer might be, and that drummer is definitely going to notice that I put the time in, to learn 20 originals on a $75 gig. Well, he damn sure knows if he's gonna refer me for a bus gig, I'm gonna obviously show up and have the material down.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened on with a lot of the bigger gigs I got in town is because I was playing with the lesser known artists, and I took the time to learn the originals correctly, and somebody else in the band had a bigger gig and recognized that and pulled me up with them.
Yeah,
That's
so you're
Yeah,
basically saying that every gig you were playing, regardless of the pay, was like an audition for that next gig that you
every
wanted.
time. Yep. And so how I got my very first bus gig in Nashville, that was pure luck. Um, and that was actually so I was playing with a band before I moved down here that was based out of Southern Illinois, and the keyboard player in that band plays for a group here in Nashville called Six Wire,
Hmm.
and
Oh yeah,
they're
Six
kind of
Wire. Yeah,
yeah,
I know
they're
them.
like a Nashville super group, right? There's like
Yeah.
everything's like full voice harmony, monster musicianship. Like talk about playing the record, those cats got the record. And I was playing their keyboard player, Steve Hornbeek, had a side project back in his hometown, which is across the river from me in Missouri and Southern Illinois. And so I was playing in his band, and I moved down here, and the steel player in that band, as I'm driving down to Nashville, calls a friend of his, and it's like that he played with Marty Stewart back like 30 years ago. And he was like, "Hey, I got this guitar player guy named Nicky. He's a good cat. He's moved to town. He needs a gig." And he's like, "What's he doing, tomorrow at 3 p.m.?"
Yeah.
And I'm driving to Nashville as I'm like driving down there to move, right? With all my, you know, car loaded down full of guitars. And he calls me. He goes, "Hey man, uh, got you an audition. Pays 350 a day if you can do it." And to me, I'm used to making like $100 a day at this point, and I'm like 350 a day. That's crazy. And and so I went to the audition, and I got the feeling that it was just like a courtesy to my friend. Like because they were like, "Hey man, we already got somebody kind of picked out. We
Yeah.
really like." And I was like, "Hey," at this point, I was just like so happy to meet anybody. You know what I mean? In Nashville, it's like, because that's the hardest part is making that first couple contacts. And the steel player, his name was John Rich, and not the John Rich everybody knows, but like he's the coolest cat in Nashville. This guy, and John followed me out to my car, and he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "I don't know what the story is on this." He goes, "But we're gonna work together, and I'm glad our paths crossed." And I'm just like, and hug me, and I'm like, "Oh man, that's what I need right now," like
Yeah.
it's a bit of reassurance. My first day in Nashville, and or second day in Nashville, And a week went by, I didn't hear anything, obviously. And then the phone rang. It goes, "Hey man, can you be on the bus Thursday night? At least in Franklin, the Walmart in Franklin." And I'm like, "Yeah." So I learned the rest of the songs just like the record, you know.
Yeah.
And th- they're like, "Hey, we're just gonna take both of you guitar players out, you know, and see how it goes." So I'm thinking, okay, they're gonna basically send us out and see who they like better, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
This will be nice and toxic. So I get on the bus, and Austin Crum is sitting there.
Oh, okay. Austin was on that gig. That's okay. Great.
And
All
he was the
right.
other guitar player, and I just literally read an article on like Guitar Player magazine or something about Austin like the week before this, and I'm like, oh god, like you know he's just so good. I'm like, well, there goes that gig.
Yeah, and
And
for people watching and don't know Austin, Austin is he's a great just like he's a guitar phenom. He's like probably like 24, 25, and he plays like he has been in the business like for 40 years. Uh he is just a player and he is just one of the nicest, sweetest dudes I know. But sorry, go
he
on.
is, and just to put this in perspective for people at like Austin's skill level, um, Austin's doing sessions every day, plays for Josh Turner,
Hmm.
and if I was producing like a straightforward country record, I would hire Austin to play on it instead of myself, and I play on straightforward country records every day. He's
Yeah.
just that good. He's my favorite chicken picker in Nashville. I'm not saying that lightly. I know that's a big statement to make, right? My favorite chicken picker in Nashville, but he's got it. And so they ended up liking us both for Austin doing the chicken picking thing, and I was kind of doing the rock elements because it's kind of like a rocked out Waylon kind of gig. So they kept us both. We got to be friends, and it just worked out great.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my first bus gig.
And that's it's weird. It so long and for those watching, like Nikki and I, we were touching base yesterday, and I was like, so did you replace Austin Crum on this gig? Was because I know he left to do Josh Turner, and I was like, you know what, let's just talk about it tomorrow. And when I first got to town, I didn't plan on playing music, and I talk about that in my channel. But then I got the bug again to play music, and I'm not a country musician. I didn't know anything about country. I tried to sit in on a couple of shifts and I got kicked off because I just didn't know my head from my ass playing country. People would call these tunes. I'm like, I don't know it, but I'll figure it out. And it was like a Shania Twain song, and I did not figure it out because it out. There was like literally one time I got kicked off stage because they called Any Man of Mine. I never heard it before because I grew up like in Chicago and Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and yeah, I definitely tanked that song. So, long story short, I got on my first regular shift Monday mornings at 10 a.m. That is like the lowest of the low. And I was willing to take that. I didn't even care what it paid. And most times we would be lucky to make $100. But I was playing, and it was with a singer songwriter from East Tennessee named Elijah Wise. And Austin Crum was on that gig. And
I love that.
I didn't know who he was. Like I didn't know anything about country music. And I was playing on that for like and I was hanging on for dear life because I didn't
Yeah.
know anything about like I literally would have to call up a chart for Mama Tried. I'm like, I
Okay.
never heard that song.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Austin Crum. I was like, is everyone in town this good? Because
No, they're
holy cow.
not. They're not that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Austin was like he was on the road recording, but he was buddies with Elijah, and he was driving when he was living in East Tennessee. He was driving, getting up at like 5 or 6 in the morning, driving 3 hours to Nashville to play this $100 gig.
Yep.
Um, and I had no idea who he was, and he was just like such a sweet, kind dude. And yeah, he was man, it was I got so much footage of us playing and like listening to him play, and I got spoiled with it. Yeah, and I had no idea. Like I literally had no idea who he was. But yeah, he and I saw I think I saw him about a month ago. I was leaving a gig on Sunday and he was as well. And yeah, it's always great to see him. He's also a dude that I don't think anybody has a bad thing to say about him, right?
No. No, and if they do, they're probably not somebody you need to be listening to.
Yeah, and that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Like people always talk about the hang, and I think that is a really I know where their intention is coming from, but when I was younger, I thought the hang meant I had to be cool. And sometimes I thought like the hang being cool was like being like really confident in my instrument and doing things like bad habits I learned in college. Like when my college professors would just ream somebody out and embarrass them in front of everybody. And I thought, oh, that's the way to establish your dominance, you know. And I really didn't learn that until I had taken about 10 years away from music. And I realized the hang is not about being cool, but the hang is something else. How do you view the hang or that basic term?
I view the hang is multifaceted, but I
Okay.
feel like the most important part is obviously causing no trouble, right?
Hmm.
It's like if or being the loudest, most annoying one on the bus, just don't wear people out. That's all it
Yeah.
is. Just be as easygoing as you can. Go with the flow. If catering's not your jam that day, just shut up and eat it.
Yeah.
And you know, just be considerate and clean and
Yeah.
clean up after yourself. If you're in a hotel room, you guys are having to grab showers. When you get done, wipe the water off the floor. Stuff like that, like little things that people don't think about. And you know, when you get on the bus, don't leave your shoes hanging out in the middle of the aisle or throw all your stuff in the back lounge. Try to keep everything as contained as you can. Little stuff like this. It's literally comes down to just being considerate.
Uh-huh.
It's the hang. That's I've just babbled a whole bunch there, but basically, all
No, no,
boils
I
down
think
to
that's insanely valuable. It's
it's
not
whoever's most
about
considerate. That's all. This is consideration.
Yeah, it's about being okay, is it easy to live and travel and be around this person?
Yep.
Um and so along those lines, how do you how do you deal with the situation when you're playing on the road or you're playing locally and somebody else in the band isn't prepared? Someone didn't do their job, or somebody, we had a term where I was growing up, gets out of pocket. Someone steps out of line, or they say something to you, like maybe the artist, and they say something that is, or they disappoint you somehow. How do you deal with those negative interactions? Do you stand your ground, or do you just be like, I need to be as easy as possible to work with and just keep it moving? What's your take on
That
this?
it's no matter how somebody's treating you, you just got to keep doing what you do and be yourself because everybody has bad days. You never know what somebody's going through at home
Hmm.
or what the actual circumstances, not what was somebody was talking about at Music City Bar and Grill about somebody. Like you never know
Yeah,
what somebody's actually going through, and so just being kind and considerate and patient with people, as you can. I struggle with that because I put a lot of effort into being considerate and coming prepared and taking care of things. And so when somebody's not doing that, it's hard for me to, you know, be like, okay, just be cool, give them
yeah,
time. And if they're a repeat offender of something, they tend to weed themselves out anyways. The artist will eventually get rid of them or something along those lines. They'll find a way to disappear eventually. If they aren't cutting it, or they keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
yeah. Like, again, I was telling you that if somebody wants to dig their own grave, I will try to politely say, hey, why don't you try doing this? Have you ever thought about this? But if they want to dig their own grave, I'm not going to help them do that. They're
Yeah,
doing a good enough job on their own. If that's something they want to do, cool. But yeah, we curry no favor by pointing out when somebody is wrong, even if
no,
they're wrong. Um,
nobody ever gets ahead by talking bad about somebody else or stepping on somebody else's head to get a leg up. It never works.
Yeah, and I always felt like if you have a need to criticize somebody else, and sometimes it's hard not to, or it's hard not to like partake in that gossip. But if you have the need to criticize somebody else, you're criticizing yourself. You're speaking more about your need to speak negatively of other people than about that person themselves. Um,
Exactly right.
and again, things I never learned until I, took some time away from music and grew up a little bit. And these are also things I keep in mind when I'm working in town, like working on Broadway. And I'm curious, have you done work on Broadway, or is that something you're like, that's not for me? What's your take on that for musicians in Nashville?
So my Broadway playing has been very hit or miss. So like my first 2
Hmm.
years in town, I was on an artist gig, and so
Hmm.
I played Broadway maybe 10 times my first 2 years in Nashville,
Yes.
and so it was always fun for me because I didn't do it all the time or need to do it. So it was just like a little vacation, go down, get drink and have fun, and there's a bar tab and they give you food,
Yeah.
and I get to actually rip and improvise for 4 hours, because you might not get to do that on the artist gig you're on. Or if I'm on I was playing sessions too, and so I'm having to play very reserved most of the time, so it's fun getting ready to stretch, keep your chops up.
Yeah.
So it's like a workout for me, doing that. And then, like, I'm trying to think of when it was. I guess it was right. before the pandemic, I think. I started playing down there more frequently,
Hmm.
and I was playing. Just I started getting called more for like good gigs that made sense, and so I go down, and it was money's great, and I was playing maybe 2 or 3 times a week tops, something like that, and then COVID hit, and I just went full tracking remote,
Yeah.
just doing that, and now I've played down there like I think twice this year.
So do you think, again, given what you know and given your experience, and I know it's not the same for everybody else, do you think that playing on Broadway is, do you think that's a stepping stone, or do you think that's a way to make money and that you have to really intentionally look for other stepping stones?
I think mostly it's a great way to support yourself financially,
Hmm.
but it can wear you out. And a lot of the time, you need that energy to go find those stepping stones other places. And I know for me personally, after a 4 hour shift, I'm not going to want to go to the local and shake hands and try to meet somebody that's in A&R or production or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to be shot, ready to go home and chill. And, for me, especially because I'm recording so much at the house too, if I go do a 3 or 4 hour shift on Broadway, odds are I've recorded 2 or 3 songs that day as well. So that's a lot of playing. I'm not going to want to go network, and people do get good gigs off Broadway. I mean, like, just if somebody's on an artist gig and they're down there and they're playing with somebody that's also a pro and doing really well, they're likely to lift that person up, be like, hey man, come, let's go do this gig. I know people have gotten good gigs from playing on Broadway.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that very heavily. And, I moved to Nashville at the end of 2021. I didn't start playing until 2022. And for me, like that first year, like I was playing with Austin that first year, and it was like school for me. I
Yeah.
went to school for jazz. And I did grad in classical, and yeah, all this, all the songs that were being played on Broadway were not taught in those institutions. And so, but it was like a year of school for me, and I really got that under my belt, and I was feeling a lot of fulfillment just by, oh, I played a 4 hour shift today, and I knew all the songs. Um, and I was like, oh, I'm making a little bit of money too. But like you're saying, yeah, it can grind you down in the way that if you're playing for 4 hours straight, and a lot of people don't understand, when you're playing on Broadway, there's no set breaks. And you're playing for 4 hours straight, sometimes with three people you've never met before. And that can be fun and a great way to stretch out your chops and stretch out your mental chops, but your brain power is just like, it's like a
Oh, dude.
muscle.
Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, if I'm in a band, I'm usually band leader in the band. And
Yeah.
on Broadway, since especially since I don't do it a lot, still it seems like I'm usually the one where the eyes go for endings and
Yeah.
intros and steering the ship and make sure the singer's coming at the right time or whatever, and that extra duty, their responsibility will weigh on you more as well, I think.
Yeah.
And you're
It's,
reading the room, okay, there's the manager coming through, make sure nobody says anything stupid on the microphone, that
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And like it is. So I've been telling people that when I'm playing on Broadway now, I'm a little bit more selective about what I'm doing. And I'm trying to intentionally only do a couple gigs down there a week, not because I'm too good for it, but because I want to go in other places. And every time I play a gig, even if it's on Broadway, it is a Super Bowl for me. It's like I want to be
Yeah.
prepared. I want to have all the songs ready. I want to have the count offs. I want to have the endings. I want to have the tempos. Who's playing what? Do these people like a 3-4-1-2? Do they like a 1-2-3-4?
Yeah.
And then also, but since I've learned all the songs like on piano and guitar, I have all the charts. And so a lot of the people have been like, I've been like having to tell them like, all right, this is like, this is 11:55. Okay, play
Yeah.
the intro that way. And for that, that's natural number system for people who don't know. And then just doing things, or like really reading the room and reading the musicians to figure out where the energy is going, what the front person needs. And it can be, I love it, but it can be draining.
It is. Yeah.
And I've been doing these things where I've been streaming my gigs live and finding different ways to get setups where I can get better audio and having it stream live. So I've been doing things like this past weekend. I finally troubleshot through my whole setup where I could, okay, at least I can get one solid camera up right now that can stay up for an entire stream and use the front of house mix, have that piped in, and
It's great.
like what I'm eventually doing is I'm gonna turn that into a 3 camera shot and have
Yeah.
AI switch between them. Again, I'm bunny trailing here, but saying that those gigs can be so like it's rewarding when you pull it off, but like I tell people, it's like I am a short order cook, I am a server, and I'm a cashier during a lunch rush, and
Yes.
it can drain you. And then I find that playing on Broadway, you can meet some people, but it's not going to get you. You're not going to network in the same way, and you're not going to be in the same room with those people.
You're networking in a different class a lot of the time too, and there's people that from every level that are down there just making money too, and some people just like to work all the time, you know?
Yeah,
People, like, will come off, like, a gigantic tour that even pays well, and they'll go down there and play their Wednesday 6 to 10 or whatever, you know? And those people are great to network with, you know, and work with, but I think you can if you're gonna put your energy somewhere, I think to propel your career upward as a sideman, I think you can do it maybe a little more efficiently elsewhere.
yeah, or like, so right now we are in the attention economy, the energy economy. Like we have access to all these things and all this information. So where are we investing our time and energy? Because that's a finite resource, and
Yes.
it's the tricky thing about playing on Broadway, for me at least, is like I can make money down there. I have to take a little bit of a leap of faith by turning down gigs and trying to branch out in other areas.
Yes.
Because like there's so many people down on Broadway that are making 6 figures a year right now, easily.
Yep.
Um, and it all boils down to what's your definition of success? Is it money? Is it having your name out there? Is it playing on these big stages? Is it a combination of both? Would you rather be making $75,000 a year playing on arena stages, or would you rather make $150 or 150,000 a year playing on Broadway on these honky tonks and dealing with everything that comes with that? Like, where's the trade off?
And your quality of life too. You know, I feel like certain road gigs are healthier than other road gigs. You
Hmm.
know, and I realized this. My private instructor when I was at the Musicians Institute, he played for Earth, Wind, and Fire, and he was just telling me like what road life's like. He's like, those guys, man. You know, like, talking about the original members of Earth, Wind. He goes, there's no party in them. You know, he goes when they get off stage, they go back and they have their bath ready for them with candles, and they're all vegans, and there's
Yeah.
certain things we eat at catering. It's very specific, and it's the whole body's a temple thing with them, because they've had to do that to keep going as long as they have and stay as healthy as they are. And you can see that in musicians. You can tell obviously what somebody's lifestyle like by looking at them. And I feel like there's two kinds of musicians with this. There's the guys that have like lived hard and like just lived hard. You can see it on them,
Mhm.
And some of the Broadway cats, you can see it on them too. Like they're grinding down there all the time. You can see it in their eyes. And then
Yeah.
there's the people that like really take care of themselves. And if you look at, I noticed that like on the studio side of things too, all these studio musicians, like the A-listers, they all look 10 to 15 years younger than they are. All of them. Like it's really strange. It's like because you can just tell they haven't been out in the sun digging ditches their whole life working construction or something.
Yeah.
They're not in a super hardcore party environment. You know, very few times have I seen a beer on a session. You know what I mean? This is You're not gonna see that.
Oh yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's just like full. Like, okay, I'm engaged in this moment. I no. Yeah. I
no,
get you
yeah,
on
we're
that.
we're we're creating sonic miracles here. We need to have
Yeah.
every single bit of our wits about us. Yeah.
Yeah. You're performing musical surgery with precision,
Yeah.
and it's like you want to have every advantage you can.
Yeah, if you're on a session with Steve Brewster, you know, you cannot be a quarter inch ahead of the click, because that pocket's gonna be so deep. If you're anywhere north or south of it or east or west of it, it's gonna be very apparent, and so
Yeah.
like you need to like be rested when you get there, really be on top of your A game, so you keep getting the calls back for these things.
Yeah, and so we got about 15 minutes, and I wanted to like, I mean, we could like talk forever, but the one thing I was curious about is like you were talking about doing road work and how like you've kind of navigated to different phases in the industry, and talking about how some of the pay is a little bit different on the road, but you're also seems like you're wanting to, I wouldn't say take a step back, but you want to kind of invest more into a lifestyle and career where you have a family and you're not on the road
Yes.
24/7. So what are you doing to kind of facilitate that right now?
Okay. So I try to be if I'm, like talking about the last video, as transparent as I can with money because it's a strange thing that nobody wants to talk about in our field.
Yeah, it's a dirty word.
It is. And, I like percentage wise, what I make on like if you're like split my income into a pie, right?
Hmm.
Um, I would say when I was on tour full time, like I just like even like on my even looking at my tax returns and stuff like that, because that was a W-2 gig, you know, I was making probably 40% of my income on a full time artist gig
Hmm.
and 50% of my income doing recordings and then 10% teaching and miscellaneous little random things here and there, or just random things. Um, but before the touring gig, I know I can pay all my bills, 100% just on recording in my house. But recording at your house can also be a grind. It can like really wear you down. It requires so much mental energy. I'm trying to read clients' minds through the computer and read between the lines and what they want, recording acoustic and electric. And if you're recording guitar on like a, CCM song or something, there's going to be 10 layers of guitars on it. It's not just like
Yeah.
playing one take through something, So it's a lot of tracking, a lot of file management, waiting on things to upload, even with smoking fast Wi-Fi and making sure everything's it's easy to do. And then say they want a revision, being able to keep that level of customer service where it needs to keep coming back, And I can pay all my bills doing that, but I'm trying to get it to where I'm doing more tracking sessions in town because it's easier to feed off the people's energy around you in the room.
Yeah.
And it's better, obviously better for networking.
And it's also inspirational. Like
It
music
is.
is, it's a team sport.
It is. Absolutely.
And like recording at home is like, practicing free throws, which is really important. And practicing your fundamentals, really important. But putting it all together, like on the court or in the studio, that's where like the magic happens. And that's really what music is, at least for me.
It is. I agree. And so like when I'm doing this stuff at my house, usually guitar, I'm the first point of contact a lot of the time.
Hmm.
And depending on what their budget is, it might just be a guitar and a vocal, or they might be doing programming on top of the guitar on the back end, or adding bass drums and stuff. No, but so what most people would consider like a scratch guitar for me has to be pristine and dead on the grid. Because
Yeah.
say they're going to program something on there, it has to be just exactly dead on. There can't be ahead or behind, nothing. It has to be like just really, really precise. And doing that, you have to leave enough space. You're trying to juggle whether you're going to leave enough space for the bass and keys and everything, or how full they want it. Because a lot of clients online don't have the communication skills or vocabulary to really communicate what they want, what they need. So sometimes you have to figure out, am I give this person what they want or what they need, and that's tricky.
Yeah. You're sometimes you want to straddle that line, and
Yeah.
then yeah. But so with, are you looking at, do you want to make it performance based? Are you trying to like do things like, so with your YouTube, are you making money off YouTube? Are you simply doing that just for exposure? What's your intent behind YouTube right now?
My my intent was just for exposure, but I actually filled out all the stuff or I got approved for monetization this morning. That
Okay.
last video blew it, way past whatever it needed.
Yeah.
That I was not expecting that to do as good. They got like
Your last video is
300,000.
like, has like 320,000 views right now, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy. And everything before that, I had a couple that were doing like 20,000, 13,000, 2,000
Hmm.
here and there. Um, so it's kind of creeping up towards monetization, anyways. And this one came and
Yeah,
smoked
just
it.
blew the doors off of it.
And so I'm like, okay, I need to ride this if I can, and try to keep something coming in. But the goal is honestly, I just like teaching,
Hmm.
and I like sharing some different ideas and creative things on guitar, and just to leverage that into more students and more visibility here in town as well. And I figured this would be a good way to help promote my website I'm launching as well, and the
Okay.
NashvilleTracking.com thing.
Okay.
And so eventually it's going to be a mixture of like insider behind the scenes Nashville stuff, straight pure guitar lessons, and I'm probably going to do a course at some point as well here later this year, and then do like overdub sessions here at the house. Like, hey, here's how you can make money at your own house. Here's the skill set that's required.
Hmm.
Here's how I layer tracks and build songs out, and how I communicate with singer songwriters and make their vision happen. And here's how the money works for this. Here's how it works with the union. Here's how whatever you're doing, and then use that to promote the website. That
Yeah.
was the goal.
So,
But now it looks like I might be able to make some money off it too. So if I can, that'd be great.
so you're talking about a lot of musical things, but then like a lot of marketing and a lot of entrepreneurial things. Like you're an artist, but you're also your own company. And I was curious, where do you see the divide in labor and energy with your time, like versus musician, artist, I need to practice, I need to get good, and versus like business and being an entrepreneur, and versus marketing and videographer, like where do you see a division of time, or do you intentionally try to focus on certain things? What's your approach?
The best way to answer that would probably be to tell you, like, what a regular day/week looks like for me. Is that alright?
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
kick it.
So I get up at 5:30 every day, which I know is, like, not the musician way, right? But it's weird. So yeah, I know. I know, everybody's, like, checked out there like, "Okay, forget this guy," you
No, no,
know?
no. You messaged me the other day, like it was like 5:30 or 6, and I was literally I didn't want to. I've learned how to check my awkward humor. I'm like, dude, are you going to bed or are you waking up? Because this is like no man's land for musicians.
Yeah, and so and I try to keep I never text or, call anybody, before I'm actually pretty strict about this. I try not to bother anybody, outside like regular business hours, like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
And I'll shoot like a Facebook message or an email then so they can see when they wake up or whatever. But I try to treat this business like an actual business would be run. And so
Yes.
I try to work pretty much just unless I was on the road. But if I'm not on the road, I work Monday through Friday. I get up at 5:30 a.m. and wife goes to work and I sit there and I practice for about 45 minutes. And I have to like if I don't do it then I won't get it done the rest of the day. I'll be too tired by the
Yeah.
end of the day. So like I have to prioritize that. And I practice for about an hour to 45 minutes, something like that. And that looks like a bunch of different that practice routine adapts and changes quite a bit. And then what I do is I go up and I actually already have the songs charted from the previous day. So I chart at the end of the day. And the reason I do this, I think something happens cognitively when you're sleeping. If you chart out the song the night before, you record it. And so
Ah,
that's for these online things. And
okay.
so, say I'm doing 3 songs that day. I try to have most of them, all three of them done by like 1 o'clock is my goal
Hmm.
usually, or noon somewhere in there. Um, and then I'll go try to play tennis. Do something physical. I'm a tennis player, so I'll go do that 2 or 3 times a week. Back home by 3, and then I chart out the songs for the next day. And I'm doing the business stuff off and on in between sending out tracks, right? Like if the song's bouncing down, I'm responding to something on my phone, or scheming some kind of plan for a production project or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it changes a little bit. The business side of it kind of adapts to whatever's needed at that time, and it comes in waves. So like recording online will come in a big wave, and then for some reason, if that dies down 1 week or it's slower, 3 tracking sessions will pop up, or tracking sessions, or a showcase or some random something. It always balances out to be about the same amount of work, and I try
Yeah.
to be done by 5:30 every day.
Okay. And then after that is what, like your personal, your recharge,
Yep.
your.
And it's I go to bed around 10,
Mhm.
and those 5 hours, wife comes home, we get dinner, do whatever we're gonna do normal people stuff like you would if you worked a job at Home Depot.
Yeah.
And um, the YouTube thing, I take 1 day a week or a half day, and I do try to do a YouTube video. And I was doing all my editing on the bus. And so when I'm on the tour bus, that's where I do just like the crap work on my computer, right? Like the time consuming editing because you're going to Texas, you got 12 hours to get there and back.
Yeah.
So I do that. I would tune vocals, do rough mixes and things like that on the bus that I can do on my computer. So when I was on the road, I worked nonstop on the road. And none of my friends would be annoyed with me. They're like, just please come have a beer.
Yeah.
And I would sit there and edit videos for 4 hours and then tune a vocal on the way back, and stuff like that. And just trying to allow myself to have as much normal human time as I can, 5 to 10 o'clock at night. So I'm not being like, oh, I'm sorry, babe, I gotta, do this work on my computer here. So I
Yeah.
can maintain some normal kind of life balance, with music and still be able to, because this is a privilege doing what we do. It's so great getting to do this all the time. But there's a lot of work to it. Like you're saying, there's so many things you're doing. You've got to be a videographer, a mixing
Yeah.
engineer, an artist. You have to be a band leader for me most of the time, and I'm putting bands together for people that I'm not even in the band and things like that, and managing that. And okay,
Yeah.
so and so's not working out. Okay, we'll try this person. So it's so much different stuff all the time that it's hard to like put your finger on. But usually it's practice, record, chart, have fun, sleep, repeat, Monday through Friday.
Yeah. And
Weekends, whatever I want.
and you talk about downtime, and that seems to be rare for musicians because especially when we're in this 24-hour cycle where we always need to be putting content, we always need to be showing that we are relevant, we always feel this need to validate ourselves. I think that's by design, by the social media. Like that's how social media makes money, by keeping us engaged at all
Yeah,
times.
you have to be available.
Yeah, and I think like drawing those boundaries is it's incredibly tough to do, but it's also like incredibly productive, because you were talking about tennis, and I was bringing it back to tennis. I was thinking about, like, if you're like an athlete, if you're a tennis player, if you work out hard every day nonstop and sleep and then do the same thing over and over again, you can keep up that pace for a little while, but it burns you out physically and mentally until something breaks mentally or physically.
Yep.
And yeah, you might be able to get ahead in the short term, but in the long term, man, you can pay the price. And
Oh man, I was so guilty of this too. And on
uh-oh. So,
a normal job. Can you hear me?
okay.
Am I still there?
Yep, got you,
So
gotcha.
my
Yep,
wife
there,
my
there.
wife works a normal job, so before she came along, I would just work nonstop, and I never had
Yeah.
any downtime. And I realized that, okay, I'm working, I'd do a track, and I'd go watch 30 minutes of something on a YouTube video, and jack around and come back, and before I know it, I didn't really have any free time for myself, like a block of time the whole day. I was just recording literally so I woke up till 4 a.m. or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and 7 days a week, I never took a weekend off, nothing, and to me, that was just normal. It's like, okay, if you get to play music, you need to be punished, and this is the price you pay for making a living playing guitar. And then I realized, okay, to hell with that. You don't have to do that. Treat this like a normal job. Dial it back. And what's interesting is my income actually went up when I started doing that because I was working more efficiently.
Yeah. And sometimes also when you become I was talking about being in the attention and energy economy. And when you start putting more of a premium on that, or more boundaries around your attention and your energy, it becomes more valuable to other people. And it also becomes more valuable to yourself, because you're like, I only have this is my budget today. I need to stretch this budget as far as I can.
Yep.
So like when you're in college and you don't have a lot of money, you think, how can I stretch out my budget financially? And now it's like a lot of us musicians are still thinking about that financially, but we're also like, when we're required to do so many different things, and we can do those things, we just have to figure out how to budget our most precious resource, which is our time and our attention and our energy.
Exactly
um
right.
yeah. And so we got about 2 minutes left, and I wanted to, like, we go on forever, but
Dude. Yeah.
I wanted to, like, is there something you want to plug? Is there somewhere people can, like, take a lesson with you? Can somebody hire you for something? What's tell me what you're doing, what you would like people
Okay.
to know.
I got you. So I love teaching. I
Okay.
usually keep 10 to 15 students kind of on a rotation, and I don't do like the weekly thing. Some people want that. That's great. Some people do every 2 weeks, they'll do a lesson. And then some people just do it as needed. If they're like a advanced intermediate player, and advanced player just want to learn something fresh, or kind of like a little polish up. And I'll do like 3 lessons with them a year. But yeah, you can just find me on Instagram or whatever, and just go
Okay.
on there. It's Nicky V Music, and shoot
Okay.
me a message, and we'll get something scheduled. I usually teach, like I said, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through
Hmm.
Friday. Somewhere in
Okay.
there, we can usually book something, and
And
I play on
so,
people's tracks too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
do you have any shows coming up? Any live shows we can get and check you out? Or are you focusing more on recording right now?
I am not doing any live shows right now. I don't think I have
Okay.
anything scheduled whatsoever on the books, unless I'm
Okay.
thinking about forgetting something. But um, yeah, if you need me to play on any of your songs, that's what I do. I pretty much record full time, and just hit me up for that. But basically, the thing I'm excited about now is NashvilleTracking.com. I'm working on the website every day right now, trying to get that up and rolling, and that's going to be Nashville's, or the world's access to Nashville studio musicians. I'm going to start out
Okay.
just doing guitar tracks to work out the kinks for about 6 months, and I'm start adding
Yeah.
drummers and bass players and everybody.
And when do you think that's going to launch? Timetable?
I would say in a month.
In a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, my anxiety just rocketed, because I'm like, oh my God, 30 days to launch. I think about all these checklists and all
Oh
these things
man.
that
Yeah.
need to automate. And are my chat bots up to speed? Do I need to research more about my AI? And I'm sure you and I haven't even asked you about it, but I'm sure you and I could talk for hours about AI. I'm guessing
Oh God.
you probably explored that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's like, I'm sorry. I don't mean. I try to keep myself kind of composed, but like hearing that, like I laugh, and it makes me so excited and happy and also scared, because it's going to change our society.
No, whenever I do a YouTube video, I write like a loose like bullet points. Here's what I want. I say, hey, make this better or whatever in Chat GPT, and they'll go through and they might just pull out a few vocabulary words that I wouldn't typically use that I feel like might convey the message better to the listener. So I'll take that in and then I rewrite it to AI, whatever they do. I take it and I change it. And I don't read a script. I just kind of have
Hmm.
bullet points that talk about. But
Are,
yeah, I used to make it better and um, usually I start out with something I do, and then I run it through AI, and then I change it back to whatever closer to what I
okay.
had originally with a few
Yeah.
tweaks from the AI. That's how I use it.
Are you using ChatGPT 3.5, the free version, or 4?
Whatever the free one is what I'm using. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna have you on again because we're
Okay.
gonna need to talk. Like, because I'm just like, I can change your life. I can change your life. Not me,
Please.
but like show you a couple things. Like, I've been leaning into the AI thing very much. And I'm trying to balance, like, personal health, music, all the business things.
Mhm.
And again, it's quite music. There's always going to be an opportunity. It's just like you have to figure out where the opportunity is going and be there before it gets there. Because if you're going there, going chasing where you think the opportunity is, by the time you get there,
It's
it's
gone.
gone to something else. Yeah. So I was told to cut off at 4 p.m. and like it is 4 p.m. Um, but yeah, it's been great, man, dude. This is Yeah, I'm gonna have to message you a couple ideas, but thank you so much for taking this hour out of your
Yeah,
day.
man.
Um, and we'll be crossing paths soon. All right.
That sounds good, man. I'm not a coffee guy, but I'm a donut guy. Let's go get donuts one morning. We'll catch up everything else.
Okay, man. I'll do the donuts with you. All right.
Done.
All right, man. Have a good day, Nikki.
Appreciate you, man. You too.
All right.